What's going on, everyone, and welcome into another NFL Draft Profile. The draft is roughly 100 days away. I am unbelievably excited to keep going on this project. This is prospect number 2 of hopefully 200. Over the next week or so, you're going to see these videos a lot more. Be sure to tune in for all of them. Hit that like, comment, and subscribe button. It means the world to me when you guys engage with these videos. I love doing them. The draft is one of my favorite things to study and do throughout the entire sports calendar year. This is a treat of a draft. I mean, it's not star-studded, but that's where the work really begins. You find gems. I'm going to be doing all of my favorite prospects first, the most intriguing ones to me. And Michael Trigg, tight end from Baylor University, is absolutely one of those guys. Over the last 2 years, he has accumulated over 1,000 receiving yards, and I think he's caught around 9 or 10 touchdowns for Baylor. Now, this is a guy who has bounced around college football quite a few times. First stop was at USC. He transferred to Ole Miss, where he really never got the shine that he was looking for under Lane Kiffin. And then last but certainly not least, over the last couple seasons, he's been at Baylor, where the expectations for the team were really high, and the actual execution on the field, especially defensively, was extremely low. But Michael Trigg is one of the highlights of this Baylor roster. And draft-wise, this is one of the most polarizing prospects in my book so far to this date. I'm super excited to get to talk about him today. So let's hop right into it with the strengths of his game. His catch radius is out of this world. He stands at 6'4". I would not be surprised if his wingspan was 6'8" or 6'9". He has extremely strong hands. This is a possession catch monster. Not to mention his large frame creates a nightmare matchup for almost any defender, specifically linebackers, stiff linebackers at that. There was a great play. I either believe it was against Oklahoma State or maybe it was Utah. Either way, Trigg just ran a 5-6 yard stick route. He had the tight end posted up and he pivots off of his foot and gets open deeper down the field. And what was supposed to be a 5 or 6 yard reception for not a first down ended up being a 16 to 17 yard reception. And that's what Trigg does consistently on the tape. What he does better than almost any other tight end that I've looked at so far is he finds space, whether that's in zone coverage, getting to the soft spot of the field, and obviously being a gigantic target for his quarterback. Secondarily, he also is a great in the scramble drill. Like I was talking about, his footwork is the emphasis of his game. This is the last part about his strengths. The body control that he has comes from his lower body first. He really plays the pivot of the drop in his route. And what I mean by that is, when you're talking about a slant route, right? Look at my mouse on the screen here. You're going up and then you have to stick and slant, right? The drop in your route starts right there when you get to go to that angle. He plays that unlike anybody at his size. At 6'4", you don't really see a lot of players be able to get depth in their hips and explode left or right, kind of like a signature power forward. Reminds me a lot of Zach Randolph in that area. When he's going up against bigger defenders that weigh more than him, he's able to leverage his body into getting position on them. That's really what I admire about his game. I think that translates perfectly to the NFL. He's going to have to go up against a ton of matchups where he is undersized in the weight category, yet his elusiveness with the fluidity of his body is going to get him open on the field when given that opportunity. The question is, how many times will he receive that opportunity? But we'll talk about that in just a minute. Last but certainly not least, the scramble drill is something that he's almost perfected. This offense had a ton of those plays over the last couple of seasons. The traditional offense broke down, and between him, Josh Cameron, and I believe Bryson Washington, the running back, that trio of skill position guys really shined for this Baylor offense under Sawyer Robertson, the quarterback. The Baylor offense was not the problem with this Baylor team. The defensive side of the football just could not stop a nosebleed if they had a handkerchief in their hand. It's unbelievably ridiculous. But overall, Baylor showed consistency when targeting Trigg. He had great games over the last couple of years. I didn't really watch a ton of his film at Ole Miss and USC. I think he really got snubbed for time on the field at both of those stops, either due to his age and or due to some other players on those rosters, quite frankly, just being better than he was at that time. So Trigg finally gets his shine at Baylor. These are the strengths that I saw on the film. Let's talk about some of the weaknesses. At the bottom of the tight end class in terms of weight, and I do think this is going to be a big time factor for Trigg in being able to see time on the field. Going back to my profile that I just did about Lander Barton at Utah, please go check that out, by the way. It's a great breakdown of his game as well. But weight, in my opinion, I'm talking about muscle mass here, right? I'm not talking about actually going to McDonald's and eating a bunch of Big Macs, right? I'm talking about actual athletic weight. If you don't have that, you limit the ability or the widespread capabilities of your availability on the field. I, in my opinion, would never put Michael Trigg in an I formation or a play action pass play where he has to run block. This is not the tight end to do those things. Now, he can lay down the occasional crack block. When he's lined up in the slot or off of the line of scrimmage and he's got to come down and crack a linebacker or a defensive end or even a big nickel, he does that exceptionally well at times. But in terms of being an actual down lineman and expecting him to chip a defensive lineman and move up to the second level or seal off a defensive end or a blitzing linebacker or even pass protect, those are not in his repertoire right now. I think they could be, but let's talk about the questions about his quote unquote maturity. Now, I personally am never going to disparage a player for their off the field antics because I don't know the context of these situations. What I will talk about though is on the film, you can see that play to play at times, his effort varies on what is going on the field. When he does not have the ball thrown his way and it is a clear, targeted play for someone else, I've seen it a few times on the tape. He takes a couple plays off. And I don't necessarily think that's unique to him. I think that is an overall issue in a lot of prospects throughout the NFL drafts of the last, 15, 20 years. But Trigg specifically at the tight end position, it's hard for me to understand how somebody can continuously do that and see the field at the same time. And then last but certainly not least, in terms of quote unquote weaknesses, there are a good number of rumors about his maturity issues, and that's kind of alarming considering at the start of this next NFL season, he's going to be 24 years old. Like I said, he started at USC, couldn't find the field there, transferred to Ole Miss, had the same problem, and then transferred to Baylor, yet we still see some of these quote-unquote maturity issues in his third stop in college football. In my opinion, that's a little alarming, but I'm not going to dive too deep into those personal issues because number one, I don't have the context, but number two, if I was in the weeds like that in message boards and rumors and blah, 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 I'd never get these draft profiles done. So those weaknesses I have just found from other critics and scouts on the internet. It's not necessarily something that I want to harp on, but I do think it's something of note because a lot of other people have made note of it, as well as the fact that I saw it on the tape a couple times when I was watching his film. So overall, the two biggest weaknesses are a general form of maturity, as well as his inability to block as a result of maybe his effort, but also because of the lack of size and aggression that he has when engaging in traditional blocks. You don't see it too often with Trigg's game. If he's going to be blocking, it's on a screenplay versus a smaller defender or on a crackdown block, most likely, once again, against a smaller defender and unsuspecting defensive lineman. So not a ton of experience in that category. I think that limits the ability for him to be on the field. So let's talk about overall what I see here. Trigg is, in my opinion, one of the most intriguing prospects because you have some of the most special capabilities of this tight end class when it comes to the receiving game. That's on one hand. On the other hand, he has bounced around college football and has some intangible questions about him. This, in my opinion, is not even a 50-50. I'd say a 60-40. I think I'd lean towards drafting him just because if you put him in an experienced locker room with a lot of veteran presence that not quote unquote teach him the ways, like he has no idea what he's talking about, but guide him into being a mature veteran type player in the NFL, he's 100% professional capable, especially when we talk about the receiving qualities. And I don't think he's incapable of learning how to block for his size. There's no question in my mind that he can excel in the league. However, unless you do some deep digging on the context of the maturity issues, the reasons he bounced around college football, unless you do some deep digging on that and find out the real answers and do, your due diligence in terms of draft interviews and whatnot, you're really rolling the dice on a prospect like Trigg. If it were up to me and I needed a receiving tight end, I would absolutely roll the dice on Trigg. But, like I said, that is not something that a lot of NFL GMs like to hear before they even dive into the film. So that's my overall thoughts on Trigg. I like him as a prospect. These are my grades and comps. So let's look at my grading scale. 1 to 3, rotational player. 1 to 3 is a practice squad player. 3 to 5 is a rotational player. 5 to 7 is a 3+ year starter. 7 to 9 is a Pro Bowl caliber player. And 9 to 10, of course, is a Hall of Famer. Hardly any 9 to 10s in my grading scale. It's hard for me to go out on a limb and say somebody's going to be a Sherlock Hall of Famer. So look at the grading comp I have for Trigg, a 5.4 out of 10. And my comp for him is Juwan Johnson, who he is now. Now, when Juwan Johnson came into the NFL back in 2019, I believe, or maybe it was 2020, he rotated from Penn State to Oregon, kind of that same transfer type deal with Trigg. Now, Juwan Johnson had some questions about his hands. As a matter of fact, I'm pretty sure he transferred or transitioned from wide receiver to tight end just because of his size. I kind of see the inverse happening here for Trigg. I find it far more likely that he will transition into being a wide receiver, a possession type catch guy, maybe like an Andre Johnson without the wide receiver bag that Andre Johnson had. But that's a massive overstep in terms of draft comp. I think Juwan Johnson is perfect. He has great hands now. He has athletic ability that Trigg replicates at Baylor. The ability after the catch, he's very fast in terms of tight ends and can absolutely be a receiving threat on all 3 levels of the passing game, intermediate, short, and deep as well. So Trigg, in my opinion, is a wide receiver almost when talking about tight ends, but one that could absolutely grow and fit the scheme of some NFL teams out there. There are schemes like the San Francisco 49ers that as a tight end, Trigg is never going to be able to play in. Now, how ironic would it be for the 49ers to draft him? But I digress. I think that his game translates to a lot of the fast-paced spread offenses that maybe could use him in situations early on in his career. And as he grows and develops, maybe he can transition into a full-time starter over the next couple of years. That's kind of why I have him here at a 5.4. I think he kind of approaches teetering the line of whether or not he's going to make it into the NFL as a certified starter. But like I have said many times throughout this video, I absolutely think that Trigg has the potential. And if I had the choice, I would draft him with a 3rd, 4th round pick and just hope and pray that my veterans can give him the right tools to succeed. Like any good GM in the league, if I don't have a good locker room, I probably wouldn't consider Trigg. The effort problems. Now, once again, all of this being said, I'm saying all this in jest, right? I'm not out here accusing Michael Trigg of being immature or, having effort issues consistently. All I'm saying is what I've read versus what I saw on tape. And there are some things that concern me that I would want to dive deeper into if I was a GM. But I like Michael Trigg as a prospect. I think I've said that 1,000 times this video. That's going to do it for this one. Let me know what you think of this guy. He's one of the most polarizing prospects that I've seen across the board so far. Thank you guys so much for watching. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and we will see you next time.